Ever feel like you're stuck, like you're in a famine and all the good stuff, all the abundance is happening somewhere else?
It's a pretty common feeling, right?
Totally. And this deep dive, we're going to dig into a story, a sermon actually, called Don't Get Out of Bethlehem, Even If There Is a Drought. It's about that exact feeling. Tough choices, yeah, and those plot twists you totally don't see coming. But it's also about the surprising payoff.
The harvest you almost missed, right?
Yes, the harvest you almost missed if you just stayed put. Anyone who loves a good story with some, deeper meaning, this one's for you, especially if you're feeling a little, I don't know, stuck or unsure right now. So picture this, Bethlehem,
Okay, I'm picturing it.
but not like the Christmas card version. Think Bethlehem, but there's a brutal famine going on.
Which is tough because, and I mean, people probably know this, but Bethlehem literally means house of bread. It's like the last place you'd expect a food shortage.
You're going to starve in the house of bread. That's rough. And right in the middle of this whole crisis is Naomi and her family. We don't get their whole life story in this sermon, but we get this picture of people deeply rooted in Bethlehem, like this is their home, Can you imagine facing starvation in the very place that's supposed to represent abundance?
It's like that moment you realize the thing you always rely on, your go-to solution, it just isn't working anymore. Like the bottom falls out. Have you ever felt that way?
Yeah, 100%. Like when your usual bag of tricks just doesn't work, it's like, whoa, okay, time to panic. So the sermon talks about how Naomi's family makes this like huge decision. They're leaving Bethlehem for Moab. Yeah, Moab. Now I know what you're thinking, a change of scenery. What's the big deal?
Right. But Moab wasn't just the town next door. Think different customs, different beliefs. They even had different gods. So this wasn't just like changing their address on their driver's license. This was a complete uprooting.
Yeah.
Physically, culturally, I mean, everything.
So less of a vacation and more like they hit the reset button on their entire lives.
Exactly. It was the ultimate flight response. Like, things are bad. Let's just get out of here and hope for the best.
And that's where this sermon gets really interesting, I think. It connects this whole Moab situation to the quick fixes we try in our own lives when things go south. So we left off with Naomi and her family, right? And they're making a break for it. Moab, their version of like hitting the reset button.
Yeah, but Moab's not exactly the welcoming committee because the sermon doesn't sugarcoat it. Things go really, really bad. Naomi's husband, he dies in Moab.
Oh, wow.
And if that wasn't rough enough, both of her sons, they die too. I mean, can you imagine wave after wave of just terrible loss?
It's like she goes looking for a safe haven and walks straight into, well, more heartache. It's like she can't catch a break.
Well, it's tough, right? And it makes you think about those times, when we're so desperate for a solution, any solution, that we abandon things, our values, our dreams, the people we love, just for a shot at something, anything better.
It's like trading one problem for another, like that old saying, out of the frying pan, into the fire.
Exactly. We've all got our own Moab.
Yeah.
Those tempting escapes that sound amazing at the time, but in the end, they might actually lead to more pain.
Have you ever felt that pull? Like, get me out of here, anywhere but here. Even if you knew deep down it might not be the best move.
100%. But that's what's so interesting about this sermon, right? It doesn't, wag its finger at Naomi for her choices, for trying to make things better.
So it's not about judging.
No, it's actually the opposite. It emphasizes how God is always faithful, even in Moab, even when we make mistakes, even when we mess up big time.
So even when we stray, even when we're convinced we've blown it, there's still hope.
That's exactly it. And that's huge, right? It's not about judging ourselves or others for those Moab moments. It's about recognizing that no matter how far we stray, we're never too far gone.
We can always find our way back.
You got it. And that's where Ruth enters the picture. You remember Ruth, right?
Ruth, one of Naomi's daughters-in-law. She's a Moabite, right? But even after her husband, Naomi's son, dies, she sticks by Naomi's side. She chooses her over tradition, over everything, really. She chooses to go back to Bethlehem with Naomi.
And that's a big deal, right? Incredible loyalty. And it's interesting what happens as they're heading back to Bethlehem. Word reaches them, and it turns out the famine. It's over. Bethlehem is back.
Wait, so she left because of a famine and now there's a surplus? She's going back to abundance.
Full harvest.
Ugh.
She left broken, grieving, totally lost. But now, things are different. It's like, boom, everything's blooming again.
Talk about a plot twist. It's like the universe was trying to tell her something all along, but she couldn't quite hear it yet.
And that's where the imagery in this sermon really gets me. It suggests that sometimes the real growth, the amazing stuff, it doesn't come from running away. you know?
Hmm.
It comes from looking back at those places, those situations, those relationships that we're tempted to just run from and making the choice to go back, even when it's hard.
And isn't it interesting, though, that even with this good news, this abundance waiting in Bethlehem, the sermon says that Naomi, she comes back bitter. She even asks people to call her Mara now, which literally means bitterness.
That detail is huge. It shows that returning to our Bethlehem, that dream we put on hold, that relationship we almost walked away from, it's not always sunshine and roses. It can be messy, it can be painful, and yeah, it means facing the very things we tried to outrun in the first place.
So she's back in Bethlehem, right, where there's food again, plenty of it, but she's still carrying all that baggage, all that loss, all those choices she made. It's like even a harvest can't erase that kind of pain.
And that's the thing about bitterness. You know, it can eat you up inside, or, and this is kind of amazing, and when you think about it, it can become like fertile ground. You know what I mean? Like the ground's been turned over, it's been through something, but that's what makes it ready for something new to grow. And for Naomi, that something new is Ruth.
Ruth, right. She's still there. Even though she's been through so much loss herself, she doesn't leave Naomi's side. It would have been easier to stay in Moab, but she's chosen this path. She's chosen Naomi.
And think about it, that choice, that loyalty, it leads to Naomi being blessed in ways she probably never could have imagined back when she was, naming herself bitterness and all that.
Mhm. Because Ruth marries Boaz, right?
Exactly. And it's not just any marriage.
Hmm.
Boaz, he's a landowner, well off, respected. And this marriage, it restores Naomi's place. It continues her family line when everything seemed lost. It's like, talk about unexpected harvests, right?
This is the part that really got me, and the sermon makes a big deal about this, Naomi. She becomes the great-grandmother of King David. King David.
I know, right? It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
This woman who returns to Bethlehem, just heartbroken, feeling totally empty, she ends up a major figure in the whole story.
It's like, by sticking with her Bethlehem, even when it was the hardest thing to do, she stepped right into her purpose. Which makes you wonder, right? What King David moments are we missing out on in our own lives because we're too quick to give up on our own Bethlehems? You know, those dreams we've put on hold, those relationships we're thinking about walking away from. Maybe we just need to hang in there a little longer, be a little more patient, and see what might grow.
That's the heart of it, right? It's a call to action in a way. Don't run from the hard stuff. Don't abandon the things that really matter just because you're in a season of drought. Stay rooted. Stay faithful, because you never know what kind of harvest might be waiting on the other side.
So what about you? What's your Bethlehem? That thing you need a little extra faith for today? What are you tempted to walk away from too soon? Because sometimes, and the story really drives it home, sometimes the greatest growth doesn't come from running away. It comes from the courage to go back, to hold on a little longer, to believe that even in the midst of what feels like a famine, a harvest might be just around the corner.